Battle of Hastings, it's your first time that you've engaged with the local history and you engaged with the local history chronicles. But you also draw very interesting parallels between, what's happening in the world, current world, but also ancient China. And chronicles across different times and places. But wanted to ask you, what was your kind of biggest surprise when you were reading the local historical chronicles?
I think it's amazing kind of process. It's also very painful to read the Anglo-Saxon chronicle because it's written in the Old English and no one could read it. So it was translated into modern English. And I think just to go through who slain who killed who, which minister, which churchman, did what, and which king did what, and I think it's this kind of incredible, intense kind of historical chronicle of the ancient Anglo-Saxon history, but written by monks at that time. And before that, of course, I had to study Bede, the English history, the Bede, the 8th century, 9th century great monk. He was also a translator. And I realized this is nothing actually, one unique case, because that time is Tang Dynasty China. So it's transition. So 8th century, 9th century is a great Tang Dynasty moved towards Song Dynasty. But in between, there's kind of a few kind of small dynasties for the transition from Tang to the Song. And I thought in this book, My Battle of Hastings, I should really somehow do the comparative study, but in a non-academic way, to suggest, during the Battle of Hastings time, around 10th century, 11th century, in China, there's a Song dynasty, which is a great dynasty in the East, or perhaps the greatest at that time, 11th century. And I just laid out the comparative difference, 11th century, what happens in Normandy, what happened in Anglo-Saxon land, Wessex Kingdom or whatever, the Vikings coming down. But in Song Dynasty in China, which emperor did what? And as I think last speaker you had is Professor Michael Wood, and I think he was saying Song Dynasty right after Tang Dynasty, 11th century is the first world democracy, which I think I found an amazing speech. I think he said it's the first kind of open, kind of modern society in the world, and that's only 11th century. Yet 11th century in the West is something else. It's medieval time. It's a war ravished. Really, it's kind of after the Romans, before the kind of figuration of the European political map. And I think in China, the dynasty has been established for hundreds of years, rather stable. I thought about to suggest that and to see a kind of global map at that time, even though that's 1,000 years ago, to suggest a few personalities. And I mean, this simply I cannot answer in 2 minutes as Peter wanted me to do, but I would to do another time to say the church culture in the West in the 11th century is very interesting. It's by monastery. And the chronicle in the East at that time, during the Tang and Song dynasty, it kept by the courtesans, mainly female ministers. And we also, at that time, after the 𝗱𝗲𝘁, we had the first female emperor. So the female courtesans in the high court, in the Song dynasty, they kept all the record. And that's very interesting contrast of the monks in the church writing chronicles. So for me, all these are very important, but I didn't want to overload such a small essay book. So you read about a page, quite sparse, and then it just abruptly stopped. And I felt perhaps less is more. I think you can learn in the university if you're interested. I think writing this book is kind of restrain myself, but somehow just give you some kind of clue in the East and West comparative study.